The idea that James Colzie or Billy Rolle are the only two people who could lead FAMU to success is an extremely closed-minded and, dare I say, dangerous way of viewing the FAMU coaching search. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Finally, the mouth of the South has returned to YouTube. No, when I put my head up with the microphone, I felt like The Rock. So I thought I'd come back with finally. And it really has been a while because some technical difficulties kept us from having a morning show. So we're doing this show actually pretty late, but I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. This is Locked On HBCU. I am Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. I really do appreciate this more than ever because we have been keeping a relatively good schedule, and I never post episodes this late. So for you to make this your first listen of the day and to rock with me in the evening like this is greatly appreciated. We'll still be back with a Friday episode, just so that we're aware. This is Thursday's episode of Locked On HBCU, and it's brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn, put down a $5 money line bet, and you'll win $150 back in bonus bets, win or lose. We wrap up today's episode with a look at bracketology, and I know it's an extremely early look into where the March Madness will lay out, but Norfolk State women's basketball is currently ranked at 14, so that's something I think is really cool, and we should look at it because it's a payoff of what they've done in their out-of-conference schedule. Now, before that, we have a two-part topic about this FAMU coaching search. Segment 2, we'll look at Tiffani Dawn-Sykes because with everything going around the search, I think this is going to be a make or break moment for her. But prior to that, I think we need to get real. And I'm going to get a little comfortable, right? I think the idea that it's James Colzie, Billy Rolle, or we're not accepting anybody is a very closed-minded way to view this FAMU coaching search. Now, I'm not saying that they can't be your favorites, but the idea that you just won't accept anybody, or the idea that these are the only two coaches who could lead you to success, first off, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with that. And I think it's closed-minded for you to feel that way. And I understand this might make some people feel uncomfortable. This might rub some people the wrong way. It might be like, man, we've been supporting your channel. Like, how you gonna call us closed-minded? But I think it's kind of got to be said, or this is just how I feel about it. And I do feel like it needs to be expressed. James Colzie and Billy Rolle could be very good coaches, but they're not the only very good coaches in the nation. Now, the reason I say this is because Sean Gibbs, and I'm not advocating for Sean Gibbs, to be very clear, I do not want Sean Gibbs to get the job simply because I don't have a dog in the race either way. I just don't think that the situation adds up, okay? But Sean Gibbs was put out there as the potential hire for FAMU, and everything turned to doo-doo, right? Everything went to crap, and everybody got upset. And when I was hearing some of the reactions, it kind of illuminated something for me. Yes, Sean Gibbs has controversy. Yes, Sean Gibbs comes over with the North Carolina A&T versus FAMU fight from 2019. And I know some people don't think that's a real thing. Trust me, that's a real thing. Like I as somebody who didn't go to either one of these schools, it was one of the first things that I heard about when Sean Gibbs was put in the mix. Is one of the things that I heard continue to be discussed. But afterwards, I started hearing kind of a tone of, no, we want Colzie, we want Rolle. That's the only thing that we're accepting. And they want it in the name of continuity. I have absolutely no problem if you think that Colzie or if you think that Rolle are your coaches. I have no problem with that. Or if that's who you want to be your coach, right? I won't say that. but doing it simply in the name of continuity is dangerous. And the reason I say this is because I've yet to see somebody outside of the leadership council. So none of the alumni, I'm directing this directly to FAMU alumni. I'm not speaking to the athletes. I haven't heard anybody in the alumni base say that they think either one of these guys would be a good coach. Every time that somebody advocates for Rolle or Colzie, it's always in the name of continuity. And that's where the closed-mindedness comes from. Every cycle that we have somebody get hired, right? As soon as your favorite team, whether that's your collegiate team, pro team, whatever the sport, when you're coaching or when your team's coach has been fired, you have somebody that you want to replace them. But there's typically reasons, and it's not just running it back. I believe that the players press this button with such strength that it trickled into the alumni. And they say, hey, well, the players want it, so that's what we got to do. No. The players wanting a coach is not enough to say we're going to get the coach. I believe that the players should be valued and their opinion should be held up. But that's not just they say it, so we're going to do it. Or they say it, so we're going to roll with it. Granted, a lot of people probably want to run it back anyway. And maybe the players pushing for it just further cemented that. But this is how I view it. Continuity is extremely dangerous because you're not having full continuity. You're just simply not. What you're doing is taking somebody who was under a great coach and hoping that they could be a great coach. Every failed head coach was once a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, worked their way up the ranks. Bill Belichick, the Patriot way. How many guys have we seen leave Bill Belichick, leave the Patriots, and go coach and fail miserably? Almost all of them. The only success I could think of is Brian Flores. The most successful head coach to come out of the the New England Patriots pipeline is Mike Vrabel, and he wasn't a coach there. Being underneath Bill Belichick for those years doesn't equate to you being a coach. And when you speak about continuity and that being your main thing, okay, what about in 2025? What about in 2026? I'm not here to deny Colzie. I'm not here to deny Rolle. I think that there's value in continuity because you have relationships, you have trust, you have genuine care from the players. They can feel that. I get it. They laid it out. Shout out to the players. I don't quite like them saying that you're going to lose a team where everybody's going to enter the portal. It feels somewhat like a threat, a calculated threat, a smart threat, and maybe a real life outcome of not hiring one of these guys. But I think it gets dangerous when you say it has to be these two, as if continuity is the only way for FAMU to be successful. And I'm not being pessimistic when I say every failed coach was this, that, and the third, because with that logic, well, why would you hire anybody? It's just to say, don't close yourself off from all of these possibilities. I think that when you operate under the idea that continuity is necessary for FAMU to be successful, you're closing yourself off to everything, and you're kind of hindering yourself to 2024. Because what about when these guys leave and you have to go recruit? And once again, I have no problem. But if you're going to tell me you want Rolle and you want Colzie, I'm beyond the point where I'm accepting continuity as the answer. That can be a driving force, and I have no problem with that. But I need somebody to tell me, outside of the leadership council who did a phenomenal job doing that, I need somebody to tell me why Rolle, why Colzie will be a great head coach. Because once these guys leave and the continuity is over, this whole culture thing of these players saying we want to go with somebody who cares about us, you have to now run it back with the next recruiting class. And that requires you to be a good coach. It does. And these are things that you have to think about when you're looking at the coaching search for the Rattlers. And I don't feel like many people, if they have thought about it, have expressed that. So I just wanted to come on here and I wanted to say this, and I know that might rub people the wrong way because a lot of FAMU is like, I want Colzie, I want Rolle. Don't do a coaching search with your eyes closed. You know, like, don't do a coaching search with your eyes closed. Don't come in there and only look at one place. You got to look at everywhere and then decide that James Colzie and Billy Rolle are the best for the job. But that's my opinion on it. And for some, that's going to go in one ear and out the other because we want continuity, right? I can't change everybody's mind and whatnot. But one of the people who doesn't want continuity is athletic director Tiffani Dawn-Sykes. And unfortunately for her not wanting that continuity has put a lot of pressure on her, because if this doesn't work, right? Let's say that she does go this way. If it doesn't work, a lot of people are going to be calling for her job. And that's the reason I consider this a make or break opportunity. But let's look at that at greater length as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn, put down a $5 money line bet, and get $150 back in bonus bets. Notice I didn't add any caveat. I told you do this and you get this. You don't have to win. You don't win, lose, indifferent. You will get a $5 money line bet, right? $150 back if you win a $5 money line bet. If you lose a $5 money line bet. So go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. They will have the best odds for the playoffs. Chiefs versus Dolphins, Lions versus Rams, Jordan Love returning, or Jordan Love going to Arlington to see if he still owns property in Jerry World the same way that his predecessor did. There's a lot of great storylines and a lot of great odds. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I'm going to lean back because I kind of enjoyed my positioning here. But I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports today. And I know I dropped this later than usual, but just like if you were to listen to this at 9 a.m., it's going to be closer to 9 p.m. when you hear this. You can still go check out Locked On Sports today. So go ahead and subscribe today. Locked On Sports today, first ever 24/7, all day, every day sports network on YouTube. Now, we looked at how I view this. I think we should keep our eyes open to everybody and just see everything. Unfortunately, the choice that Tiffani Dawn-Sykes made was Sean Gibbs, and that didn't sit right with a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of things that haven't been sitting right with a lot of people when it comes to Dawn-Sykes. And because of that, it's reached a boiling point in which this is now a make or break moment for her if she does not go with the in-house hire. If Dawn-Sykes goes with an in-house hire, she goes with a Rolle, if she goes with a Colzie, I don't want to hear anything from anybody if that's not a good hire. That better not be a reason that you want to get rid of her. It can't be. It can't be, right? Because the National Alumni Association of FAMU, they voted against Sean Gibbs. They voted against having confidence. They said, we don't have confidence in AD Dawn-Sykes. So now you see where we stand today. They're voting against things they don't like. Dawn-Sykes was there, and there was an overwhelming majority that said we don't trust in her. We don't have any confidence in her. I would assume this is an accumulation of things building up. I would hope it's an accumulation of things building up, because if her not picking the head coach that you want to succeed, Willie Simmons, is the reason that you're asking for her job, I think you need to check yourself. I think that if this just led to you reaching to this point, you need to get yourself together. The truth is, as I'm reading, it seems to be a lot of things that have just started to make people mad, and it's things that I brushed off. It's things that were probably locally a big deal, but now you're in the midst of a big story with trying to get a new head coach. Your alumni voting against you. They're saying, let's suspend the search. It's everything. Like, this is a national story, at least HBCU wise. This is a national story. So with that being the case, in this angle that I'm sitting in, you can see how much I talk with my hands, and it's ridiculous. But with this being the case, now everything's on Front Street. Let's scoot up a little bit so I can read all of the things that I'm seeing. I think that a lot of people felt as if she should have, or they should have, negotiated. See, sometimes you gotta understand that when you're in a position of power, you have to take blame for everything. And I think that's where we're at right now, because I don't know how much of it is Dawn-Sykes. I don't know how much of the AD, how much of it is FAMU, the school, but she's going to be the face of that. And I think some people feel like you should have been negotiating with Willie earlier. You should have been asking for fundraising earlier. And I don't know if the amount of money would have kept Willie from leaving. Maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't. But I think you would have at least been able to walk away and say, I did everything I could. And maybe there's some Rattler fans, Rattler alum, who feel like you didn't do everything you could to keep a great head coach. And we have a problem with that. Understandable. Now, another thing that I've seen is people are upset at the idea of them leaving the OBC, the Orange Blossom Classic. I didn't hear much about that when the news was broke. I thought it was strange. Why would you leave the Orange Blossom Classic? This is FAMU's. They're the only team who's been in it every year. So for them to leave it didn't really make sense to me. And it's also seemed like there hasn't been much communication, and that's where people are upset. They want to talk. But the reason it felt like it came out of nowhere is because despite leaving the OBC, despite, not negotiate, I don't know, maybe that wasn't a thing you could even talk about during the year. And then she raised the ticket prices, and people were upset about that. But I thought people were just upset because nobody ever wants to pay more. Like, whoever wants to pay more? So that was a logical thing to be upset. But I thought it was going to be something that came and went. These were all small things to me. Now these are huge, right? And I think that a lot of the problems are stemming from there not being communication. Was no communication about leaving the OBC, was no communication about raising the ticket prices. And maybe the worst thing, or not the worst thing, but something that was definitely detrimental is after they raised so much money, more than intended, there was no reach out to say thank you. And I know it must be trivial. Oh, you're upset about a no thank you? Well, that's a big deal, man. If I raise over $100,000 as a unit, right? Not me, just myself, but as a unit, if I raise over $100,000, I'm in six figures in fundraising. I think that a simple thank you, some gratitude is warranted. Not would be nice, not I'd appreciate it. It's warranted for me for what I've done, right? But nothing. That's what it seems like. So now all of these things have reached a boiling point. Now all of these things have reached a point where, they're upset. People aren't happy with Dawn-Sykes. You got to get this one right. Because the thing that probably took it over the top from the majority of people is the fact that you didn't negotiate with Willie. So now it's like we wouldn't even be in this situation if it wasn't for you. That's why I call this make or break. Because now everything is being called into scrutiny. Like everything is being criticized. Everything is being under a microscope that you've ever done. You got to knock this one out the park. If you go away from the grain, if you decide, I don't want to hire who everybody clearly wants me to hire. Let's be real. I'm not saying 100%. But if the coach is not Billy Rolle or James Colzie, a lot of people are going to be upset. Players are going to be upset. Alumni are going to be upset. And if they truly do hop into the portal, this is going to set FAMU back. And then by setting FAMU back, you're going to be proving everybody's point. So if a bunch of players on the team hop in the portal because they don't like the coach, well, then what is that? What's next to happen? It's probably going to be bad. How many people leave the portal or how many people have a mass exodus in the portal and then are good the next year? So you really didn't make the wrong hire. You don't know that you made the wrong hire based off of those results. But at the end of the day, people are going to say, see, I told you. And if you don't hire Rolle or Colzie, whether that's Gibbs, whether that's Oliver, whether that's me, there's going to be people who are sitting there waiting to say, I told you so. I don't know if anybody's going to be wishing that the Rattlers lose because of it. Maybe some. There's going to be some. There's haters everywhere. But there's going to be a good amount of people who are waiting to say, I told you so, because they do not believe that you made the right call. And everybody wants to be right. Now, granted, some people want to be proven wrong, but everybody wants to be right. And when they're, or feels like they're right, and likely wants to be, but maybe that's speaking too much for me. And, the business and everything. But you can best believe the fact that majority of people want these coaches. If you don't pick these coaches, they're going to ask for your head more than they already are. It already seems as if people want Dawn-Sykes fired. And it feels out of nowhere because 2 months ago, it felt like everybody loved her. It felt like everybody loved AD Dawn-Sykes. Then Willie Simmons left. Then she wanted Sean Gibbs, which is just not one of the two people that most people wanted in that fan base. And everybody turned. I understand there was a lot of things going on, and maybe slight irritation was okay. But once you have a big deal, all the slight irritations now turn into big deals. I've been there. This was small, but now that I got something that really made me mad or really got this emotion out of me, now those things are elevated to the same size. Overall, I think that how this football coach turns out over the course of a couple of years will be a make or break moment, and we could be looking at a pivotal decision in AD Dawn-Sykes' career at Florida A&M, or maybe even the beginning of the end of it. It's tough. But as we push forward, let's move away from this scandal. Let's move away from this situation, and let's look at the Norfolk State women's basketball team, because they're 14 in bracketology, which is pretty good, and it's the payoff of what they've done in the out-of-conference schedule. So let's look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the official sports book of the the official ticketing of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, if you have a game that you want to go to soon, for example, I think I'm gonna try to get to this Pelican Mavs game. I'm buying my tickets on Gametime. Trust and believe. I just got the notification. If you get the app and you put the notifications on, they'll tell you this went down 25%. This went down 50%. The tickets for the Mavericks versus the Grizzlies plummeted when Ja got hurt. But it's not just for sporting events. Theater, comedy, concerts, right? All of these things, you can catch them on Gametime. All you have to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and then you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Easy money. Go to Gametime, download the Gametime app, create an account, and get $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Now, I wanted to look at Norfolk State's women's basketball team because they've positioned themselves to have a really high slot in the NCAA tournament. And I know it's January, the beginning of January. We're 2 games in the MEAC season. What are we doing discussing the March Madness tournament? Typically, I wouldn't. Typically, it's not that big of a deal. However, when you're 14, that's a big deal. Ironically, if the bracket stacked out the way that is projected to stack out, like right now today, or at least last time I checked it, which was earlier this week, you have LSU versus Norfolk State. The reason that's funny is because the last 14 seed, which was only a few years ago, but it's still a rarity, the last 14 seed was Jackson State women's basketball, and they faced off against LSU in the first round. So that's a little bit ironic to me. It would also be the return of Kim Mulkey and Angel Reese and Big Foe. Like they'll all be there. But I'm starting to think about the game and whatnot. Let's get away from that. The idea that Norfolk State is 14, regardless of who they play, whether that's LSU or USL, doesn't matter. It's still a huge deal because when you look at HBCUs in this tournament, when you look at HBCUs in March Madness, most times they're 16. Maybe if they're good, they push up to 15, but it's very rare that you see a 14. It's very rare. Sometimes you're a 16 and you have to play in the first 4 just to get into the real March Madness. Now, money-wise, it's a great investment. Money-wise, it is phenomenal. I would much rather play another 16 seed, win, and then go into the first round to play a number 1 seed and lose, as opposed to losing in that first game because you don't get the amount of revenue from it. Overall, because now I feel like I'm kind of sidetracking here. When I look at that, this is a situation that rarely comes up, and it speaks to how talented Norfolk State is. Now, granted, you could sit there and you could be like, well, they got the Dawn Staley cosign last year. Maybe that made people look a little bit closer. So if they're going to be able to keep up this momentum, yeah. But it's the fact that they got to 10 wins out of conference. Norfolk State won 10 games before playing a MEAC game. I don't think anybody else did that, men or women, in SWAC or MEAC ball. I don't think so. And they beat a bunch of mid-majors. They won enough. There's a science to this that, I mean, I don't find the science worth me learning because it never works out in the favor of HBCUs. At the end of the day, you're going to be a low seed, right? But there is a science, there is a mathematical equation on how they get to this point. And when I say they get to this point, I mean I wish I knew it, but basically there is an equation of strength of schedule playing a part in where you rank at the end of the day. It's a big deal. It's a big deal on why HBCUs don't get up in seeding. Like, this is a real thing. Norfolk State was obviously able to defeat that by defeating so many mid-majors in their out-of-conference schedule. And they played one of the Power 5 schools. I don't know why Vanderbilt's the school that's coming to me, but they played that team extremely close. So all of these things play a part. At the end of the day, I don't think they have to dominate to stay here, but they do have to likely win out. I don't know if they could lose a MEAC game, maybe one, but I don't know if they could. It's going to be very difficult. We've seen what every single subdivision, whether you're looking at being a mid-major in basketball on a Division I level, or you're looking at being FCS on football, they do not respect HBCU scheduling. So it's hard for me to believe that Norfolk State could lose a game and still retain the 14th seed. Maybe drop down to 15. But overall, they don't have to dominate. Or they probably have to dominate. There we go. Yeah, you're going to have to dominate. I was going to say they don't have to dominate, but they don't have to beat people like they beat South Carolina State. They beat South Carolina State by 60 points, right? There's teams that ain't going to score 60 points in a game. Like, that's unrealistic to continue to ask. But the more games you have like that, the more you solidify your 14th seed, but you just can't keep scraping by. You can't keep getting 2-point victory, 3-point victories. Maybe they're not all going to be 20-pointers, right? Because you won a game by 60, you won a game by 20. That can't be every week or every game. But I do believe that Norfolk State is going to have to continue to dominate the MEAC if they want to keep this 14 seed. But still, just the pure fact that they have been predicted. That's what bracketology is. It's just predicting to be a 14 seed. It's not something to scoff at. It's a really big deal. Now, on tomorrow's episode, I've been saying we're going to talk about this for a week and a half. But because of the technical difficulties, I wanted to get this FAMU message out quicker. So I'm about to record another episode right after I post this episode. I'm going to get something to eat. You don't care what I'm doing. Anyway, tomorrow's episode, and I apologize for the delay, but this is genuinely going to be it. I'm about to record it shortly after, right now, shortly after this. By the time you hear this, I will already be recording the Bethune-Cookman episode about their recruiting class and why Raymond Woody's success is not something that's surprising to me, despite maybe it happening a little bit earlier than I thought it would. But we'll do that on tomorrow's episode. So I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day. Until next time we hear each other, family, you can catch me on Twitter at South Exclusives. And in the meantime, in between time, take care, stay blessed. Peace.